I read somewhere, I was on your website or in your bio sheet, that the packaging was shiny, but the contents were hollow. So I tore it open and rebuilt it from the inside out.
Yeah.
Is that a quote from the book?
Yeah.
I understand what it means on paper, but could you sort of tell me where that comes from and kind of like the inspiration behind it?
Well, I think when you're poor and you have no success, all you see is the shiny shit,
Hmm.
right? I need to be famous. I need to be rich. I need to have a big house. I need to have cars. I need to fly on a private jet. I need to have millions of dollars in my bank account. I need to have this. I need to have that. You think when you start getting these things, something in you changes,
Hmm.
that you're going to become a different person. The reality is nothing changes at all.
Welcome, Third Rock listeners, to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Deevo, Chief Experience Officer for the Brand Storyteller and the Fusion Creative Brands. And each week, I have the privilege of speaking with extraordinary leaders and entrepreneurs who are reshaping the way industries work. These conversations go way beyond the surface to explore the core philosophies, the lessons, and the challenges that define the brands that we admire today. And one of the greatest rewards of this podcast is the opportunity to share the insights of some of the brightest minds in business, people who are passionate about pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. And as I always say, the stories we tell are the brands we build. And this show is a testament to the power of that concept. Let's dive in. I want to start where most bios stop before your brand is built, before your business has earned the award. Who were you before Tessie Mae's? Like, just give me like your origin story. How did you just kind of back high level 30,000 altitude, would you?
Oldest of three boys, grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, played many sports, chose high school or chose lacrosse as our primary one. Played in high school, played in college, played professionally, and then got out into the real world and figured out that the real world does not hold back, and I'm going to have to figure out how to make this on my own. I'm a public school boy. My dad's in nonprofit. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so I chose a sport outside of probably uh water polo, squash, and actual polo is like one of the wealthiest sports. So I was exposed to extreme wealth in college. That was the first time I'd really seen what rich people were up to because of my college lacrosse team. And I was curious, like, how did these guys do this? What did they figure out that I have not figured out? How do I get into this world? So I started interviewing all these dads about how they made their money, seeing if they were rocket scientists or genius or magic or something. And for the most part, regular guys that just were like, I'm going for it.
Hmm.
So I always had that in the back of my head of I want to do something. I don't know what it is. And now I'm going to figure it out.
Similar trajectories, similar observations and experiences. I use sports as my vessel out of high school. I played football in college, and I actually went to what they called themselves the small Ivy. I don't really know who it was self-proclaimed, but I went to a school in New England from California, and that was my first observation. Everyone here's driving Range Rovers, Mercedes, and Beamers, and I literally, dude, true story. My first pair of real brand new football cleats I've ever were given was when I got off the plane in Hartford, Connecticut, and my coach picked me up for practice the next day, and he went and bought me a pair of boots. And I was like, "Where the hell am I? This is," and you call it the American dream. I'm like, these motherfuckers have everything.
Again, I didn't really understand it. You go to college, you hear people talk, and then I went to one of my buddies' homes, Darien, Connecticut,
Yeah, I
living,
know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and like he's waking her up at 2 in the morning when we come back from the bar to make us fresh meals and clean up after us. And I'm like, what world is this? I'm army crawling into my house so that my parents don't wake up. And this dude's turning on all the lights, waking up his maid to make us a four-course meal. I'm like, this is insane.
Totally different mindset. I'm one of 12, so I grew up dirt poor. So you can imagine my surprises when I showed up on this campus. I feel you on that. You've talked about this whole idea, your story about this, the failed American dream that led to real success for you. What was for you, and again, it sounds like that might be part of the origin there. What was that first crack in the dream that made you really question it?
Well, I lived it for years. So, I built the number one organic salad dressing brand in the country. They had valued it at between 300 and 500 million dollars. So we thought we were going to be selling it for something around that. And and then it didn't happen. And all hell broke loose. And I was battling lawsuits, three different lawsuits from three different parties with three different weapons simultaneously, basically playing 3D chess in outer space. And and then
I like that reference. That's funny.
once it ended, and I'm handing this brand over to some private equity group for 4.5 million bucks when it was just valued at some astronomical number 2 years prior. I sat there just kind of thinking through how did I get here? Like I lived the American dream. Yes, that was it. 15 years. It didn't end the way I thought it should end. But then as I dug deeper, that's not in my opinion, that's not actually what the American dream is. I don't think it ever said and exit for $500 million. It was, you know, in pursuit of happiness or creating your own destiny or pursuing your dreams. Well, I did that. And then in pursuing my dreams, I was after this thing that I didn't have prior to starting, which was like the playbook. How do you build and scale something from nothing? How do you turn nothing into something of substance? Well, I figured that out. Now, again, the ending did not come the way I thought it should have come. But what I left there with was the playbook so that I could repeat that at my discretion. And so that's what I've been doing since, which is creating and launching different brands and companies and helping other people do that. And then also coaching some CEOs and leaders on how to kind of navigate that process. And I would never have been able to do that if the dream had succeeded, honestly,
Hmm.
because I was pushed to my absolute max. I found the limit. Joseph Campbell has a great quote: "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." My cave was failure. I experienced it. I pulled myself up and I kept going. And so I figured out how I was built, how I responded to all of my greatest fears being realized. And then in doing that, I was able to then go, man, I got two choices here. It's I can sit here and cry about it, or I can immediately get up and put everything that I've learned to use. My view of what a leader's job is: lead by example, leave things better than when you found them. And it was like, how do I turn this shit show into something that's beneficial, not only for me, but for others, including my kids?
Mm.
Like the book is so radically transparent and unfiltered on purpose because I don't want there to be any question about how hard this shit is. Because nobody does that, right? They write books as a tribute to their legacy. Oh, things got a little tough, but I was able to persevere. Hooray for me. And now I'm a billionaire. It's like, well, what was going on when the wounds were fresh? Is that actually how you felt? I highly doubt it. That's how you feel at 70. How about when you were 35 and, everybody you thought was your friend left you when you needed it the most because you missed payroll 3 times in a row
Mm.
and you completely had a complete reevaluation of relationships and human behavior. Like, is that your belief then?
Mm.
So I think so much of my failed American dream and how it led to success was centered around understanding what I'm made of. How do I respond to failure and all of my greatest fears being realized. And then what do I do next? That in reality is a character building pursuit of the
Mhm.
American dream, which I think I've done.
In the book that you referenced a second ago, that's your book called Undressed.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have not seen it yet. Just transparency, would like to check it out. I'm fascinated by people who have built something and then have the balls to talk about not what they built, but all the different minutia and the failures and the lessons that went into it. So I love that sort of story. Um, in terms, sorry, I read somewhere I was on your website or in your bio sheet that the packaging was shiny, but the contents were hollow. So I tore it open and rebuilt it from the inside out.
Yeah.
Is that a quote from the book?
Yeah.
I understand what it means on paper, but could you sort of tell me where that comes from and kind of like the inspiration behind it?
Well, I think when you're poor and you have no success, all you see is the shiny shit,
Mm,
right? I need to be famous. I need to be rich. I need to have a big house. I need to have cars. I need to fly on a private jet. I need to have millions of dollars in my bank account. I need to have this. I need to have that. You think when you start getting these things, something in you changes,
mm,
that you're going to become a different person. The reality is nothing changes at all, at all. You're just paying more for a flight. Your mortgage is more. You're a little less stressed when the credit card bill comes
mm,
because it's available for you to pay. But in reality, who you are as a human, depending on how you got that money or that dream or all these things you were chasing, they don't do anything for you.
mm,
And what I found, like, when you're a young man, you have all these dreams, all these goals, all these wishes. And I wrote so many of them down and I accomplished most of them. But all of my actual development and character building and lessons learned and wisdom, it all came from getting the absolute shit kicked out of me.
hmm
And when you understand all the stuff you thought was important literally means nothing,
Yeah.
then your idea of the pursuit of the American dream or the American dream or the previous definition of success completely shifts into all of the shit that really matters. And so I define the shit that really matters are the four things money can't buy: your time, your soul, your health, and your children's love. You can't buy them, no matter how hard you try. And those metrics now, when I think about how I allocate my time, what I'm willing to trade, right? Time for greed, time for time with my kids or, being present or going on a walk. It filters through this thing of what is actually important. Some things you just have to do, right? Like I got to find a way to pay my mortgage so we don't get evicted. That's just you got to do it. But kind of past that point, it's like, why do you have the goals? You hear all the people on YouTube, I want to be a billionaire. It's like, okay, that's cool. Why?
Yeah.
Well,
I
it's the scoreboard. It's like, I get it.
Let me interject there for a second because you can't blame. I guess you can because people always have a choice in how they respond, right? But I always sort of run up against this nomenclature and this attitude and this environment that we were brought up in, especially here in the Western world. From day one, it's always compete,
Yes.
get the best grades,
Yep.
be better than everyone else,
Yep.
be honor students, make the most money, get the best job, drive the best car, have the
Yes.
nicest house. And I reposted this video yesterday that came across my feed on Instagram and I put it on LinkedIn as well. But it sort of centers around this idea of happiness. And it has this, it's like it uses mice as the caricatures. And it starts off with one mice and then, it multiplies and compounds into millions. But he goes on this journey in the video of finding happiness.
Yeah.
And like he does all these things. He earns the things, he makes the money, he gets the girl mouse, etc. And then he starts drinking and then he starts drinking more. And then before he's like falling on the ground and dying, and then he's taking pills. And it takes him through this entire journey and it just slowly starts to back up towards the end where there's like millions of mice trying to reach for the thing.
Yeah.
And it's like what is so powerful. I really watch it, but it is kind of a funny thing. And I want to go somewhere with this question because both of us grew up really sounds like we both grew up really poor, but then we were suddenly thrust into a situation where we were surrounded by money in a very early age, and we're sort of like, wow, this kind of looks and feels good. I want some of this, right? And so in our quest to get some of this, and I'm going to ask you point blank because you're in that space, you've earned financial success, you have the big house, the nice cars, the hot wife, yada yada yada, right? And now you're on that side of the fence. Is it everything that you thought it was going to be, or were you able to somewhere in the journey realize what it was and maintain your stability and humility around it so that you didn't become consumed by it, or were you at some point in your life consumed by it as well?
I was definitely consumed by it in the beginning.
Mm,
When my kids were really young, there was no real success. We were just building, right?
mm,
Like 7 days a week, car getting repossessed,
mm,
eviction notices at the house, trying to make payroll. It's all you can think about. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
mm,
You don't have air, you're searching for air.
for sure.
You start getting some of the things. And what happens is you go, all right, cool. My idea was right. I still don't feel super comfortable with it, but like I need to get the next thing. I need to get the next thing. I was blessed enough to, and the book will explain the chaos, but I was humbled so many times along the way where you would have had to be a sociopath to come out of those humblings and still kind of walk around like a Ferrari mattered.
Mm,
Now, again, there's still moments in there where you're like trying on your vision board to stay focused and move towards the thing. And so it's very easy to print out a picture of a yacht or a plane or a car and go, these are the things I want one day,
mm,
right? Because there's no real picture of outside of probably pictures of your family of joy or purpose. And so you associate them with financial success that then provides freedom, that then allows you to kind of do whatever you want to be doing. And I stumbled upon this quote kind of going back to happiness. JFK said it in one of his speeches, which was the ancient Greek definition of happiness was the full use of your powers along lines of excellence. And so that completely changed my perspective of what happiness was, whether or not I was chasing it or not. And it really began to help me narrow in my attention, my purpose, and whether or not I was being distracted with bright, shiny objects.
mm.
There's multiple times that I was distracted by bright, shiny objects, right? I had a goalie in college, and he used to have his mesh be neon before anyone sold neon mesh. He would dye it, and I'd go, "Why do you dye your mesh?" This is like 2001, and it would be neon pink. And he goes, "Dumb animals love bright colors." And so, anytime I find myself like, need to get a new car, I think about dumb animals love bright colors.
Tell me, so your definition of you use JFK as a reference, is that what you would define happiness as for you?
100%. Well, it's the full use of your powers along lines of excellence.
Uh-huh.
And then under that, if that's the roof, there's the pillars of the things money can't buy. So then my full use of my powers, it's going to fall in line with the columns of, owning my time, owning my soul, owning my health, making sure my kids love me and we're spending time together and I'm present and all is great in the world. And I really think like when you boil my life down today, that's my entire existence, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm involved in a bunch of different companies and I'm doing a bunch of different stuff and I'm on a book tour and all that stuff's great. I'm bringing my kids along with me. If they can come to my speeches, they come. If if we can do something together as a family, we're doing it.
Mm.
I'm not going a month at a clip. I'll rearrange the schedule so I'm still coaching their sports.
You have co-founded three, is that right? Three impactful companies. If you had to look back at all three of them, is there a common thread you follow when building something new?
Now I have a filter. I created a filter of how do I want to be spending my time.
Mm.
And so I actually let it, whereas before I felt like I forced it. I white knuckle gripped everything. I have an idea. I'm going to make it work come hell or high water. Now I know that I can do it. So now I actually let a lot of these ideas just kind of unfold.
Hmm.
And if they naturally unfold and they turn into me swimming with the current, then they happen. And so there's no real rhyme or reason for what they are at this point. It really comes down to who am I doing it with? Do I think it's super interesting? Do I think it's going to work? Does it actually unfold so that I'm not forcing anything? And then if it ends up coming to not even the finish line, but the starting line, if you make it to the starting line, then it ends up being something.
You've got I was looking over your resume last night as I was thinking about how I wanted to position the show, and you've got just a bevy of things from Tessa May's co-founder to Alta Fresh Foods, homegrown brand accelerator. You're an author, you're a media presence, you're doing just a bunch of different things. When you look at all the different activities that you're doing, and by the way, I appreciate what you said earlier about kind of not burning yourself out and keeping your family involved. That's a rare attribute. I really honestly think that's a rare attribute among men, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But one of the things I noticed, I got divorced back in 2010, and it was surprising to me how many men I came across that had also been divorced but didn't stay involved in their children's lives. And
Yeah.
I don't want to go down to that far, but it's really rare to meet men in common that are doing powerful things on the planet, but also staying really focused in the family. So, to bravo to you. When you've done all these things, these accolades, when you look at them, do you sort of look at yourself and be like, "Wow, I'm the man," or do you pat yourself on the back in that regard, or do you try to sort of take a more of a you're obviously a humble man, but do you obviously take a different perspective on it? Like, there's still so much more to do.
It's not that I don't care anymore,
Hmm.
but my ego is not attached to the outcome.
Hmm.
The first one it was, and it went down in a fiery blaze. It was an epic dumpster fire. And so if there was ever a tension or ego or going on, it got lit on fire. And so now when you go through that and you see all of the people that were there with you when they check out, when they get off the train and you're looking around and no one's left except for you. And you're just like, holy shit, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
I look at the different stuff that I'm doing now more like this will be super cool. Let's see how it works out. Let's see if it has legs. And if it does, great. Let's build it. Let's see what it can become. I'm very almost numb to the outcome. Like I want it to work. I'm not going to be spending money and time on things that I don't think can work. But I don't look at all the things and like look in the mirror and just have some weird psycho conversation like you are it. You are the second coming of, brand building and companies. And I don't think that at all. I think I have the ability to come up with ideas, and then I have the discipline to bring them to life, and then I have the risk tolerance to execute on them, and that's about it.
You talked about some of the failures and the fire and brimstone. Have you ever been in a project or a brand building or an exercise where you intentionally walked away because you were able to see the writing on the wall? This isn't just something that I'm passionate about, or this just isn't going to work. And if so, can you talk me through a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of times people don't know when enough is enough, and they don't have the risk taking attributes to say I'm going to start over, I'm going to pivot, and it just fails. So I'm just curious, what's your take on having the insight and self-awareness to walk away, and what does that walking away look and feel like to you?
I think now I've created some filters like business partner filters and then business venture filters. And it's a gut check, right? It's like 10 different questions about somebody or something. And I had been in conversations with a friend about potentially going in on something together. And I go, I'm going to put this through my business partner filter and
Hmm.
see what comes out. And as I'm going through it, I'm like, this dude's not passing half of these,
Mm.
right? And so I just was like, you know what, man, I'm cool. And so at this stage, it probably happens earlier than it did in the first company. Because the first company, I was like, I've got nowhere to go. This is all I have. My entire ego is tied to this. My entire identity is tied to this. If it doesn't work, what am I going to do? Am I just a one hit wonder? And so I took that sucker to the max, dude. Like I took that as far as I could take it. And in retrospect, it had probably died 2 years prior. And my will was so strong. I was pulling off miracles for 2 years straight.
Riding on fumes.
Not even fumes. I mean, probably just gliding at that point. Um, and so, yeah, I look at things differently now. Again, I don't have my ego attached to them. And so if one of the things just like starts going under, can we sell it? Can we save it? What do we need to have happen?
Mm.
I'm just not as emotional to it as I once was.
Who do you primarily work with in terms of your brand building and some of the coaching consulting stuff, or the people you're talking to? What's that audience look like?
It's kind of all over the place.
Is there a common thread?
I think the common thread is just people going after their dream and not having anyone to turn to that
Mm.
is like probably transparent enough. Because again, I think if you're watching people on YouTube, everybody's an expert. I think a lot of the people that come to me are people that are like, this dude's gonna give me a cold bucket of water and an honest answer to a question that I need.
I love that.
And that's really what it is. If I had to find a common thread through everybody, it's like they range in industry. It could be tech, it could be consumer packaged goods, it could be manufacturing, it could be services. It doesn't really matter. It's people going after the same thing I was after, right? The American dream or just their dream or some major goal, and they've gotten past the starting point and now they're in the storm and they're trying to make it out of the storm and they don't know which direction to go.
These people, the same audience that we were just talking about, is there a single brutal truth that most of them never say out loud but should, in terms of what you would say to them, or about a brutal truth in chasing their dream, trying to build their juicy, audacious adventure that they're trying to do?
Everybody gets lost in the hoopla. And I think everybody has the same fears. And so I would say a common thing is outside forces telling people to go get something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger instead of looking at the natural life cycle of what's sitting in front of them.
Mm.
Everything has a life cycle. Everything has a season.
Mm.
And I don't think there is a proper risk assessment of where am I on this life cycle? And then what is the risk from moving from winter to spring to summer to fall and back again over an extended period of time? And then also, I think one of the other fears with some of these people is this one hit wonder thing.
Hmm.
Like, what if I was just super lucky on this? Don't you think I should make it 10 times bigger than it is right now? And you kind of go, sure, yeah, you could do that, but what is it going to cost you in doing it? Like, I have some friends, yeah, they went there and they got it and they sacrificed their health for it. So, was it worth it?
I was literally having this conversation this morning. So, what's that fine line between you've built
Yeah,
the thing is working, the
yeah,
thing is making money, the thing is providing for you, the thing is
yeah,
solving a problem. What's that fine line between having the thing built that works, but innovating and the push, because that's human nature, especially in the Western world, especially an American thing, to take something that works and try to make it better. Case in point, my most vilified piece of technology on the planet, but I can't live without it because I literally run my business from it. I just up bought my first phone in like 8 years. I was literally like a dinosaur. I had an iPhone 8. I'm kid you not, man. I walked into Verizon last Saturday and there was just a bunch of young cats working in the building. And I was like, dude, my phone's not working. It's time for a new phone. He looks at it and he goes, iPhone 8? And there was like six other people like, wait, what? What does he have? And people were crowding around like I was some fucking old relic from a museum. So anyway, my phone worked just fine Friday night. But then I got a message saying, that there was an app being sunsetted, and if I wanted to continue using my phone, I had to upgrade. So I was like, I use this app all the time. I need it. It was a social media app. It was Instagram because I use it for business, and I upgraded, and then my phone just completely stopped working.
right.
And I'm like, they know exactly what they're doing in this process, and the
Yeah.
phone worked just fine. So. In your experience, and you just sort of talked about that, what is that fine line? When do you sort of look at the situation and say, you know, I don't really need to innovate this. This is actually doing what it's supposed to do. Why would I change that? And how do you fight that urge?
Yeah. Oh, I'm going through that with one of my companies right now where my first one, we were just like innovation crackheads. It was like, we gotta innovate. We gotta find our version of the Air Jordan like Nike. We're gonna do
Give
it.
it to me, give
Let's
it to
go,
me.
baby. Like every day we're just innovating like freaks. And then another business we had was just like slow, steady, printing money. And you're kind of like, okay, cool. This is a nice change of pace. But there's a risk to comfort. And you don't understand the significance of that risk until you are facing it dead on. So there is this balance of forward progression without being an innovation crackhead, and then also understanding that company's life cycle.
Hmm.
And I think what where I'm at now with it is I have a pretty good understanding of like get it, build it, understand where your return on time is to do that. And then when it gets to a point where you can sell it and remove yourself from the scene and reinvest that into either a new venture or
Hmm.
just taking time off, whatever it is, you should probably do that because there's risk to over innovating. There's risk to casually hanging out and receiving checks all day like you're a trust fund baby. And there's probably a beautiful balance in between where you're doing what needs to be done, you're methodically innovating and growing, and then you're also looking to get out before it's too late.
So if you had to put this into a rubric for someone you were coaching or a keynote that you were delivering, Is
Yeah.
there a rubric that you could tell anybody who's sort of struggling through this potentially or considering this, that this is a rubric you should be asking yourself whether you move forward or you stay where you are?
I had this conversation with one of the guys I work with, and he was like, we can grow this thing for 3 more years and sell it at this. And I go, how much money do you have in your bank account? And he's like, not a lot. And I go, how much is your stock? He's like, a shitload. You don't understand at all what it's like to actually have money in your bank account. Because every decision you're making right now is based on pretend monopoly money in the near future. I can make $100 million. Do you know what it's like to have 10? No. Do you know what it's like to have three? No. It's a shitload of money. You can do a lot of stuff with a couple $1,000,000. And the comfort that it will provide you as a backstop is unbelievable. I'm not saying don't go build the next unicorn. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is there is a cost and a risk. If you could sell it today for 100 million bucks, that's probably what you should be doing versus risking the next 3 years to sell it for 300 million. Because the value you're going to get from being a post exit founder with a successful this and that and all this hoopla around you, you don't understand the opportunities that you're going to get from just having that win under your belt.
It's almost like a simplification of the chaos that you were talking about earlier.
100%.
One of the things that is very self-evident about you is just sort of in your charisma and your demeanor is your ability to lead, and you can see this in your case study here, your bio, and you've led through a lot of different variables, highs, lows, reinventions, startups, etc. And I ask this question to most people I encounter because I'm always curious to hear what their version of leadership is to them. What does it mean to be a good leader?
Lead by example, leave things better than when you found them. And then your only real job for the organization, the team, the culture, whatever, is to create an environment where someone can choose to succeed if they decide to.
Mm.
Your job is not to drag people to their own success, but you must have an environment where if somebody decides that they're going to be the next chief operating officer of your business or the captain of your team, that it is a meritocracy, that there is a common standard of excellence, that there are consequences to actions if they don't follow the rules of your team culture.
Hmm.
Everybody understands the metrics that define winning. And so, as a leader, your job is to kind of build the brand or the team, build the people, right? Providing resources in an environment where they can succeed. And then you freaking lead by example, leave things better than when you found them.
I love that. This is the centerpiece of your book. I'm from what I'm gathering, and I always wonder why do people struggle being so transparent and vulnerable with other people? Is it social media's fault now? But I certainly it's not just social media. Like everyone always wants to blame every ill that we are begotten on. Oh, it's social media, and I have kids. I get it. Like there's a lot of pernicious stuff going on there. But certainly before social media, we weren't all just vulnerable, transparent idioglots that were just sharing whatever we could possibly share, right? And men especially, is it a culture thing? Is it the way we're brought up? Is it the competition we talked about earlier? Like, why are people so unwilling to just be real, honest, and raw with each other?
People want to be liked at the end of the day. I mean, if you want to boil it down to something, there's another great book, The Courage to Be Disliked.
Yeah, I know this book. Yeah.
It's tough to be alone. It's tough to run in contradiction to your social network's belief system. And I think it also takes a lot of energy, right? People get tired. There's a failure of nerve. Like, do I really want to argue right now about this dude's point on X, Y, and Z, or do I just not give a shit? And so I think people wanting to be liked and also not having the energy for a spirited debate, when
Mm.
you combine those two, that's what's going on today.
Yes, I completely agree. And to that end, I read something recently. I'm really big into Stoicism. I've really been studying that for the last few years and really just diving into some of the greatest authors. And there was a piece that just really struck me and actually turned out to be the inspiration for the movie The Fight Club. I don't know if you knew this or not. Tell me if you already know this. But the Stoics in the ancient days, like ancient Greek, ancient Rome, etc., they would gather for these philosophical debates, and they'd bring their sons with them. It was only men; women were not allowed. So these men would gather in like these large halls and forums, and first they would wrestle, like physically fight in a combative situation to sort of like test their mettle because they believe in this whole idea of like physical exhaustion really breeds discipline and all these different merits that come from sports, right? And
Yeah.
then after they'd finish bloodying each other, they'd put on their togas and they'd sit around and they'd have these philosophical debates on just like the meaning of life or whatever,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And I always loved that. I resonated with that, and it was one of my first exposures to Stoicism as I was diving into it. And henceforth, I've literally spent the last, let's say, 7 years of my life. That's why this podcast exists. I don't want to debate. I just want to meet cool people in a sense of community and have these
Yeah.
conversations that actually fucking matter. Dude, I hate going to a party and it's just like these nonsensical conversations about bullshit. And I will just literally excuse myself. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I just
Yeah.
have nothing to add here. I'm just going to go over here and sit in the corner and drink my
Dude,
whiskey.
yeah, I was having that conversation literally today where I'm like thinking about going somewhere and I just was like, I really don't feel like going and having the small talk nonsense
Oh,
of, hey, how's everything going? How's the family?
yeah.
Like, how's the fucking weather? It's like, dude, fuck off.
Yeah.
If you want to have a discussion about literally anything, I'm down. I got opinions all day about anything you want to hear them on, and I'm happy to get down and dirty with it. But I am over the lack of depth, and maybe it's not energy anymore. Maybe there just isn't any, right? Like maybe everybody's just fucking brain dead.
There's so many factors that we can break that down because I don't disagree with you. I don't know if people are brain dead. I think people have just become too conveniently convenienced with everything. We have so much now. And I honestly think I look at my younger kids and they come home from school. This is a true story. So my kid has a 50% in math. And so he comes home and he's like, "Dad, this is this, blah blah blah." So I was like, "Let's set up a parent teacher conference." First of all, this is the thing that just blows my mind away. The education system. The teacher took over there in the middle of the school year. And not once has she reached out to any parent to say, "Hey, I'm your kid's new teacher that's going to be spending 8 hours in this cell block with me each day. You should probably want to know who's teaching me." So I finally get her on the phone, and I was like, we go down to her school, and I bring out all of his homework that, by the way, I physically helped him with for every single night leading up to try to get him back online. And I'm literally asking her these questions, and there's like literally I honestly, I tell my wife, I don't think she was a real human. I think she's like just a programmed
A
bot.
non-player character.
Yeah, I'm like, there's literally nothing in this conversation that registered with any depth or meaning. And I was like, I'm reading over the homework, and dude, they're doing like he's 10 years old and they're doing like cubic foot like geometry. And I was like, where did this homework come from? There, he just comes home with a homework assignment, but there's no reading, there's no references, and you're just asking questions. And she's like, well, I think at the beginning of the year, the first teacher that he had went over that, and I was like, so you have nothing to share? Like you literally just handed him a homework assignment and then proceeded to give him a 50% or an F because he didn't know how to answer the cubic square root of a geometric shape. And and there's no reading, like there's nothing. I'm like, am I supposed to tell him to use Google? Am I supposed? And she just looks at me and she's like, well, I guess there is a chance that there's probably some mistakes on the home. And I was like, that doesn't even answer the question. And it was like literally nothing in this entire. And my wife and I walked out of there. We're like, was that real? I don't think
Right.
that bitch was real. So
Right.
there's so many different things, and
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, and you have obviously found a way to move through that, and I'm wondering, like, I guess my question is, sorry, that was just sort of a diatribe. What does your circle look like? Because one of the things I really believe, and I know you're doing leadership retreats now, and you're doing keynotes, and you're building businesses, and you're like really showing up as a true version of who you are. What does your circle look like, and how important is it for people, especially entrepreneurs, which is primarily my audience, to understand that you have to build relationships and surround yourself with motherfuckers that fill you up?
Yeah, I mean, my circle's small, to be honest. I am ruthless with the information that comes in my brain. I curate it. I don't randomly listen to something or read something. It's all with purpose. And the same thing goes with people. You get fired quickly from my circle. It's not going to be put on public notice, but I'm just not going to be showing up anymore.
It actually is something we should put in place. I'm just giving you your notice. We are no longer allowed to hang out.
Yeah, like we're good. Thanks, man. Or, they'll be like, hey, do you want to come to dinner? Nah, I'm cool. I always joke with my wife, I'm the king of no. Where she's like, hey, do you want to do this? I go, not at all. How about this? You want to go here? I'm gonna go, there's no way I'm going there. And so I did, I joined YPO probably 4 or 5 years ago, which is the Young Presidents Organization. That has been really cool because it is a confidential forum of people that are like-minded. And I'm lucky enough where the forum I have is really wonderful. So it's 8 guys and everybody's in some type of different business. They're all CEOs. They're all dealing with the same shit. It's all confidential. And so once a month, you get to regroup on, okay, there's other people like me in the world.
Mm.
It's confidential. I'm getting value out of it. There's people that exist that aren't just surface level assholes. All right, I like this. This is good. And then through that network, you'll meet other people and you start building out a little bit of a network, but you're not going to be catching me, you know, in a kickball league. Like I'm not doing that bullshit. I'll coach my kids' sports. I'll do anything that they want to do with me. Like my older son, he's 13, he booked a tea time for us today. I don't even play golf, but he's like, "Hey, Dad, I got a tea time for us today at 3:30 or something." I'm like, "Let's go, bro. Let's go get it."
The fact that you have a 13-year-old that actually went out and booked it himself and took the initiative and has the knowledge to do that says and speaks volumes about what you've done with your children. Just FY. That was my takeaway from that. What that's a curious question for me because I'm a father, you're a father, and I always look at myself as a dad and how I've grown as an individual all of these years. I raised my kids, my two daughters by themselves. The wife walked away many years ago. And I look at myself as a father back in 2014 to who I am today as a father and how much I have grown and learned from my kids.
Yeah,
I hope I've taught them something, but I look at how much have I learned from them. And I'm
yeah.
curious if you can reframe that question for yourself. What has being a father taught you about yourself, about leadership, and how you've grown as a human and learned from them?
Everything. I mean, the way to communicate, the way to actually get results from people you care about, you know, leading by example. I think that has probably been the most substantial confirmation of an assumption ever because they just watch what you do.
Little sponges.
They don't give a shit what you say if it's in contradiction to what you do.
Mm,
If what you say is in alignment with what you do, they will listen.
mm,
But if it's in contradiction to your habits, they see it immediately and they're not going to participate
mm,
at all. So the greatest learning lessons I've had in leadership or people or teams is like, there's no trivial comment. There are no days off. Everyone is always watching. And so you can't pretend.
mm,
You either are or you are not, and they're going to see it. And so you can want whatever you want for your kids. if you're not doing it as an example, they're not going to care. You could say, I want you to care about fitness and health and eating right. If you don't, they don't give a shit.
That's a great
If
insight.
I had to summarize being a dad, it is just lead by example because they're watching everything. And if you want your kid to be something and you're not doing it or having some kind of line back to that being an example of discipline or waking up early or chasing your dreams or being positive or being passionate, what I don't give a shit what it is, they're not going to care and they're not going to
Mhm.
do it.
That's a great insight. I was thinking about my experience as a father, and I sort of liken it to one giant experiment. And if you can learn to control the inputs of the experiment, the outputs are going to be, more in line with what you're looking for. Because I swear, man, I just have to make shit up on a daily basis. And both of my kids are completely different. And then suddenly I inherited three new kids that aren't even my own DNA. And if that's not a mind fuck, let me tell you, I have no idea what is. Like raising someone else's children, coming in midstream and taking over like a whole new set of rules and context and parameters. Dude, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And so,
Yeah.
like, even in that process, I learned so much about myself. And I almost lost that relationship because I wasn't showing up in the proper way because I was ill prepared to handle
Right.
that. I was like, I
I
was
don't think
already,
anybody, yeah.
yeah, I was like, bro, I'm already underprepared to handle my own kids in the proper way most of the time. And now suddenly I'm thrown in and thrust in with three new ones. Like, it's a mind fuck for me. So it's really important that I love all the things that you said. Um, in our last few minutes here, sorry, I know we're at the hour. I just sort of want to leave a little bit with my listeners around your legacy, and I call it the branding legacy because that's really what it is. It's your message, right? It's the long game. When people hear the name Greg Vetter, I guess what do you hope really echoes for that?
You could just summarize it like I lead by example. I went for it. I wasn't scared of risk. I was present. I prioritized the right shit. Um, I was transparent and honest about my life. And I died with no regrets.
Mhm. People don't follow titles, do they? They follow transformation.
Yeah, I mean, you can make up whatever title you want.
Yeah.
And again, just like kids, they're gonna see through it.
Hmm.
It's like you want to see who you are as a leader, go coach a bunch of middle schoolers. They will eat you alive if you are not who you say you are.
Man, I cannot echo and agree with you more. I just you're a lacrosse player, so I've never had any exposure to lacrosse. My daughter's a lacrosse player, so my first exposure is her playing club ball, which by the way is
Yeah.
the greatest Ponzi scheme in the history of any Ponzi schemes. But anyhow, she decided to play for. She's a sophomore. She decided to play for high school this year, but they didn't have a coach, and she's like, "Dad, the program's not going to exist if someone doesn't coach." And you play sports, and I was like, "Playing sports and coaching sports don't always translate, but sure, I'll show up." Man, if I didn't learn a lot about myself coaching and we only had 14 girls on our team, by the way, two subs the whole season. If I didn't learn a lot about myself coaching 14 teenage girls
Yes.
on a field who most of which had never played sports before, I don't know what is not the greatest laboratory on the planet is coaching someone
Yeah.
else's children in a sport you have no context or experience with and having to deal with 14 different personalities. Like I learned more about my tolerance, my patience, my resistance to like learning to like how to handle like how to not bitch slap somebody. It was like, whoa, I've never heard anybody say that before. I'm gonna have to completely back up. So I
Yeah.
fully endorse that statement.
Yeah.
If you look at your life beyond the companies, beyond the headlines, beyond your next keynote, beyond all these cool things you're doing, if you really had to look at who you are as a human and your mission here, what is that?
Outside of being a great dad and a great husband, I would say, because that to me is kind of what my role is. I would say I'm the everyman translator for success.
Mm,
If you have an idea or you have a goal, you can do it. It's not rocket science. It's hard. It takes a lot. You're going to have to add some components to your life that you have never thought through before. And I think taking all of that, right? Public school boy to college to shitty jobs to starting a business to building it of some failing, doing it again, and like being honest about it. I think having that be like the everyman translator for success, I think that's kind of it.
I like that. That's a good legacy to live by. To every entrepreneur listening to this show, and I mentioned most of my listeners are entrepreneurs who feels like they're sort of buried right now and they don't know exactly what to do next. What would you say to them to remind them that, they're just being planted? There's so much more.
Think about it as a game. I didn't realize that my first 15-year journey, I thought it was 4 quarters and it was
Mm,
over. 15 years was the first quarter of my game.
that's a great analogy.
I didn't understand the timeline. And if you need to find peace and silence, wake up in the morning really early. I don't care if you're a morning person or you're not, and just write. Like I do morning pages in the morning. It's nothing profound. It's a brain dump
Mm,
of chaos.
mm,
Clearing your brain first thing allows you to then have clarity for the rest of the day.
mm.
That has been one of the most profound, and I've been doing it forever. But when people go, if you could have entrepreneurs do one thing, what would it be? I'm like, my morning routine.
Mm.
Not like the viral shit where I'm dumping my face in ice water and not that. I'm not talking about that.
Putting pantyhose on your head with curlers underneath. That's
Exactly.
viral, man. That's viral.
That you could have been that guy. But that shit, because we all are thinking about business 24 hours a day. We're trying to figure out how to, provide for our families and reach our goals and everything else. But we don't prepare,
Mm,
right? Every day is a race. It's a
mm,
marathon, let's say. Well, it's the only race where you can cheat. So it's like, hey, dude, you can get a 5 hour head start on the marathon if you wake up at 4
I
and
like
it's
that.
not cheating. And it's like people are like, nope, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna wake up at 7 to my kids screaming. I'm gonna run down with my cortisol through the roof. I'm gonna have a slight panic attack. I'm gonna jump in the car, sit in traffic, thinking about all the bullshit that has to go on for the day. And it's like,
And I'm gonna pop a pill.
right, no athlete in the history of game day would go to their game like that.
There's so much to be said for sports. I honestly, and I'm not saying that you can't be great without, I mean, clearly there are people out who have never played sports, but I really do think that it gives you a leg up on competition in a sense of all the values that you learn from playing a sport, especially if you do it at a serious level. But that's a different conversation. This was a great conversation. Speaking of, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the lab. If people want to connect with you, can you just drop us some locations where they can find you? What's the best way?
Yeah, GregoryVetter.com, Instagram, GL Vetter, LinkedIn, all the other social media channels, I guess.
Yeah, and pick up your book. Grab a copy of Undress. It's on Amazon. It's on your website. So if you want to read a little bit more and learn a little bit more about Greg and his transparent leadership and how he sees the world, grab a copy of Undress. Yeah,
Yeah, and I do the audiobook, so I read it. So if you want to hear my voice late at night or early in the morning, it's available.
I love it. Well, my man, I appreciate it. Thank you for being here, and let's stay in touch. There's a lot of different things that I just was really inspired. You can see my note. So you know what I do. Speaking of writing. Whenever I hear really cool sound bites from people, I actually take them and that's what I write about in the morning, like things that really resonated with me.
Cool.
And I'm like, how can I use this in some capacity to either inspire other people in my own coaching business or in my own branding business? Or how can this inspire me and educate me? And I have one, two, three, four, five, six things that you really dropped today that really resonated with me. And so I appreciate you, giving us that knowledge drop. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Once again, my guests do not disappoint. Greg was no exception to that. It's amazing to me how many amazing people there are around the globe that are just doing some really cool things. And this is the beauty of social media, by the way, and the beauty of the digital world that we live in. Never before would I, little old me, would I ever have the opportunity to meet amazing people like Greg or my guest on my last show, Colin, and the bevy of other people who have come on this show and just dropped a lot of knowledge for us. And so I'm just very grateful, first of all, for that opportunity to commingle for 1 hour with some really cool motherfuckers. But if you're listening and something hit home, man, go first of all, grab a copy of Undressed. Second of all, share this show with other people. You have an obligation if you felt emotionally connected to something Greg had to say to share it with somebody else. That's how the world works. We're a connected species. We were not meant to sit in silos. We were meant to share information and grow together. So if you felt touched by this, first of all, thank you for listening. I know you have choices when it comes to podcasts. Really excited that you came and landed here. Remember, building your brand means building yourself first, and Greg is a testimony to that. And if you want to be a guest on the show, hit me up. If you know someone who would make a great guest, hit me up. Either way, thank you for following us. I'll see you on the next episode of The Branding Laboratory. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.